It's all about self-determined, self-confidence, empowerment.
Welcome to Curating Tools, a podcast which explores the practical aspects of curatorial work. Through conversations with some of the most prolific curators and art professionals in the creative sector, we aim to provide you with tools and advice to help you develop your curatorial practice. This podcast is brought to you by For Curators, a platform promoting professional opportunities since 2012, and Node Center for Curatorial Studies, the first e-learning platform for curators and art professionals founded in 2009. For Curators members get access to the expanded versions and members-only episodes of the Curating Tools podcast. Prior to recording, they have the opportunity to send questions to our guests and then hear their responses in the expanded episodes. If you'd like to shape upcoming episodes and gain access to more members-only content, try our membership, which starts at only €295 per month. Get a free trial via the link in the description. I'm your host, Maria Zinkier, and today I'm joined by Birgit Bosold, who is an independent financial coach and consultant, as well as a board member of the Schwules Museum Berlin. She has been crucial to the dynamic development of the museum over the past decade, not least by designing and implementing successful fundraising strategies. After completing her studies and doctorate in literature, she worked at various renowned banks and has been a freelance consultant in portfolio management for small companies, foundations, and private clients for more than 15 years. Welcome to the podcast, and thank you for being here with me today.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to talk with you.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure. And I just read your bio. So you have a doctorate in literature, which took you to work as an art curator at the Schwules Museum, then in private banking. So this is definitely not a typical career path that students who study literature on art imagine. So could you tell us a little bit about your practice and your journey?
To start with, I always was attracted by numbers as well as by characters. I was attracted by reading and writing as well as by counting and calculating, right? So it was always both of these sides were part of my personal interests. When I was thinking about, what should I study, there was also always this tension between either humanities or economics. Best case would have been to do both. And today I would do both. I would like maybe study some like a humanity like literature or art history or something like that. But I also would start studying economics because it's so interesting. But at that time, like students, the expression pauper. It was like a kind of specific youth culture in the beginning of the 80s, like the polo shirt people wearing Benetton and having this like very kind of conservative haircuts and so on and so on. And this type of people were the majority of people studying economics.
Mm-hmm.
And as a young punk feminist dyke, I really couldn't imagine to have to deal with these people all the time for years, right? So I ended up with humanities literature. And when I finished my studies, that was in the middle of the 90s or so, at that time, and even today, we were talking about it before, it's so difficult to somehow get a properly paid job within this creative industry if you are not like a graphic designer or like an architect or so. Producing, basically, it's like curation is a conceptual work, and it's so difficult to find like proper paid jobs in this field. And so after my when I finished PhD, I again was thinking, oh, what could I do? And so I decided and somehow to go back to my second passion, and that was the financial industry. And so I started to work as like a Quereinsteiger. I don't know the German word. Someone coming from a different field, which is not so unusual in this industry. There are many people coming from somewhere else, doing these jobs, because it has to do it's very much about communication, for sure, and it's very much about being able to learn. And if you completed like a PhD within humanities, you somehow do know how to learn and how to research and how to investigate like things, right?
Yeah, you get a lot of these transferable skills.
Yes. So, and I would also say it's great that I do have both of these fields, because I really love well-written essays, but I also love well-organized Excel sheets. So, and it's for me, it's very good to have both of these sides, and somehow they are not, for me, it's not so far away. And what I also wanted to say, and I think that's important for people listening to us, dealing with business or calculation and numbers within this field, is it's not so much about mathematics. Basically, you need like the basic arithmetic skills you learn, maybe not in primary school, but at least in high school. So it's not like high mathematics, it's much more like down to the earth, with very, very basic skills regarding counting and calculating, right? Because I'm also not a mathematics freak.
A lot of it is, like you said, these skills that most people in humanities have, because we are used to writing long essays, conducting very rigorous research, looking at a lot of sources, critical thinking.
And my like basic job is in fact it's critical thinking, because I'm like working as so-called second opinion. It's like a kind of controlling of the work of portfolio managers and investment consultants. It's critical thinking in a way to really look, what do they say? Does it really work? What are the risks? What are like the difficult, problematic sides of this concept? Whatever, whatever. And so far, it's for me very similar to the work I do within curation, because it's also for me so much about bringing in different critical views. I started working within the financial industry, let's say 20 years ago, no, 25 years ago, right? So I was working for some years in different banks, blah, blah, blah. And then I went to Berlin in the beginning of the 80s. And at that time, there was like a really fascinating lesbian subculture. And I was always involved in activist work, right? I was editor of a feminist, radical feminist magazine. Uh, I We did workshops and demonstrations and whatever, whatever. So I was always involved in queer and feminist activism, and that was part of or that was one of the reasons why I was asked to become member of the board in the beginning, like in 2006. At that time, Schwules Museum was exclusively like male gay institution, and
Hmm.
as well a male gay cis male gay board. So, and I was asked as the first female, so-called female person, and that was because I was like this kind of activist person, involved in lesbian context as well as in queer context at that time. And the second reason also was because I was familiar with numbers, because they, as the museum was an institution, or they had some money to deal with, they needed someone who has like kind of skills in that area. And that was the reason why I was asked. I was a bit honored, and so I said yes, even though I at that time I couldn't imagine to stay for decades. That was not a plan.
But you have a very long relationship with the museum.
Yeah, it's a very, very long relationship. Yeah, I started, I think, 2006 or so. And when I started, it was just, yeah, I was thinking maybe 1 or 2 years just to see how it worked, and then I will see. And then I ended up like my first show I set up with no money. It was low and no budget, and it was the first show in Berlin about lesbian history in West Berlin, like the lesbian activism, lesbian feminist activism. That was the first show, And I really love to do shows. I didn't know it before because I even didn't know, let's say when I was studying literature, I didn't know that there was something like a profession called curator. I didn't know that. I was more like in, yeah, as an editor of a magazine, I was more like in journalism or, yeah, editing books or something like that. But I had no idea about museums. And for me, to set up shows in the Schwules Museum is very, very interesting to intervene in political discourses, to change narratives, to change like also power relations, right? To include so-called female views into this queer perspectives. It's one of the things I really like, and I find that shows are, or the way I, it's not art I basically curate, it's more like cultural historical shows,
Mm-hmm.
right, which also do deal with art for sure, but in it's more like setting up political history, cultural history narratives. So, and I find it's a very, very effective, as well as like in comparison to writing political programs, I would say it's much more boring than to do a show or to create a show, because you can deal with so many different. I'm even today, after 20 years, I'm still very fascinated to work with objects. So with like this kind of magic of objects, I really love to work with that and to use it to tell a story, like formulating programs or a message, basic strong message you want to really bring in the
Yeah, I was
public.
going to say that you mentioned you edited magazines and journals in this kind of activist area, but I assume that in comparison to the curating shows, that creates a presence in the physical space for this activism and something very tangible where people can gather, can discuss, and you can see the audience. You most of the time you can't see
Yeah,
people reading the stuff you you write, but you can see
yeah,
people
right.
enjoying and
Yeah.
appreciating and learning in the space.
I think it's also, in a way, it's much more complex. Or let's say, if you want to create the complexity of a show within a text, you need to be able to write very, very well. You need to write literature, as I can't. I just can write like essays or like kind of exhibition texts or so, but I can't write poems. But to include or to create the complexity of a show, which has this space itself, the objects, the design, and text for sure. It's a very complex like body, yeah, to formulate your message and to make this complexity possible with just a text, with just some characters. That's a complete, for me at least, a completely different kind of level of writing, which I can't. Then the text is not like the text, it's more like an object itself, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think people like myself who study humanities can really appreciate this in exhibitions. But speaking, from my own experience as well, I know that I had little emphasis on the financial reality of working in the arts. There was little of that in my education, and I'm sure that's experience of other people as well. Why do you think that is? Like, I think this is a question that's also quite specific to the arts, because if you choose a more traditional career path, like let's say a doctor, lawyer, or something else, you can you can opt to have a very clear professional trajectory. You know where to apply and what to do. In the arts, that is a bit more difficult. Oftentimes, you graduate and you end up on your own. Unless you have some tangible skills like graphic design or skills that can be used in other areas, you cannot produce a thing. Curators can't produce things just like that. And this job is specific in a sense that it requires a lot of space and it is a process. So, why do you think that is that art schools don't prepare students for the financial reality of working in the arts?
I find that is like a real disaster. I would say generally you could say even you are a doctor or whatever, a lawyer, everyone should have like this basic skills, what I would call financial literacy, like really basic skills. You have to, at least I, in my perspective, you should know what's going on in the stock markets, and you should know what it means to loan money and why this cost money, and you should know like basic concepts like inflation or something like that, right? Everyone should know that, because like that's part of our world, and it's like being able to navigate in everyday life, because everyone has to do something like with like salaries, taxes, insurance, retirement plans, whatever. I don't know why this is not part of the regular like school education. I don't know. And it doesn't, and I also would say even people studying whatever, they should have within their studies like courses every year, like a workshop or two workshops to to get like this basic skills to learn that. I don't know why it is. I would say it's a part of the power play, because as long people do not know it, like the financial industry, at least in Germany, is really strong and intervening in politics. And they are not very much interested that people do have the skills to really understand what's going on and like which kind of products they offer and how they work and what they cost and whatever, right? So I would say, at least for me, it's part of the power play, but also keeping this special knowledge, because knowledge is power. And as long you don't have the knowledge and the skills, you're not able to to deal with this, guys. I find it a bit similar to like the health system, like all this complicated procedures and all these complicated words, vocabulary you have to learn to understand what the doctors say. It's also part of the this keeping the hegemonial relation between doctors and patients, or in the case of the financial industry, between the bankers and the clients. So, and again, back to my approach at Schwules Museum and in my own job, it's for me basically the same, because it's all about self-determined, self-confidence, empowerment. I really want to empower people to take their financials in their own hands, and to be able to take decisions based on their knowledge and based on their values and based on their own, like being able to make decisions, right? They should be the decision makers. So, and it's very similar, like queer emancipation is also about self-determination. It's about emancipation. It's about like organizing your own life as you want. I want to go back to the question why in art schools. I don't know why they don't do that, but I also do not understand why students do not demand. I would say you should tell your universities and schools to say, hey, we need that. Please offer that. I don't understand why people do not, because like the students, in a way, they are the clients, right? They could ask for certain courses, and I don't know why people don't demand for that. One like specific, and you're right. I would say generally everyone should have this basic Führerschein, like the driver's license, to navigate within the financial system, right? As you need the driver's license to navigate with your car or with a car, you also need this kind of license to know, what are the rules, how I need to navigate to be more or less safe. Specifically in the art world, you're right, that's not kind of straight career, right? You don't know how it works, and you are much more an entrepreneur as an artist. That's the base you're working on, and even the more you need the skills, because you are not like the regular employee. You will not become a regular employee as an artist. You will stay as kind of an entrepreneur to, somehow also to deal with markets. And I think maybe it also goes back to the history I was talking about before, like because art, as it was like when it started to become like a specific sphere, it was like shaped or set as a counter reality against like the harsh business world, right? The harsh economic world outside. And I think that might be like an echo even today within art schools, that there is kind of distance to the world of business.
Absolutely. I think within the educational art education, there's an emphasis and focus on non-profit.
But even within the nonprofit, it's called nonprofit, but even in the nonprofit world, you need to navigate as an entrepreneur. And I would say the Schwules Museum is also like a nonprofit business, right? For me, it's not that much different to write applications to a nonprofit foundation or to the state, or to get money from like a private it's about sales, it's about selling, it's about, you need to have this basic marketing skills, you need to be able to sell your ideas. I would say there is not the big difference between the market and the so-called nonprofit sphere, because even in the nonprofit sphere there are juries,
Yeah.
right? They would decide if they would buy your concept or not. So you need to sell them the concept, and you need to kind of know how. And that should be definitely taught within the art
So that kind
schools.
of leads very nicely into a question we're going to jump a bit forward, but about these, that there are two different, or at least many different art worlds, and kind of I guess we can differentiate between one that's more focused on the art market or the art market itself, where there's loads of money, millions of dollars being spent on artworks, and then the nonprofit sector, or the sector that's focused less so on the financial aspect. And kind of depending on which area you're closer to, does the need for financial literacy change? If you're more frugal and you have less smaller budgets to work with, do you need to be more savvy in finance?
Yeah, maybe you have to be even better, I would say. I would say, first of all, like this art market is a very like untypical market. It's a so-called the winner takes it all market. It means like regular markets, there are many different smaller companies or even freelancer, like for example, graphic designers. It's like a very like, yeah, heterogeneous market, like very like smaller businesses, a lot of business, like competition. But in this art market, there are only a handful of people who really earn money. It's very similar to the statistics we were talking before. The vast majority of um, the vast majority of the artists are like, basically they do not earn any money within this market. uh, it's taken by a handful of the stars. I can't remember exactly the numbers, but some years ago there was a really big study about the art market, and the finding was that I think the fifth most popular male artists earn much more money than all the rest of the female artists
Yes,
in
I
this
remember that.
statistics, something like that. So you can see it's not very likely that you would get into this in this high end position. And it's not, I definitely would also say it's not about the quality of your art. It's just a lot of like good luck, like lottery, and some factors like connections, yeah, your personal background, your family background, whatever, right? There are some factors which might have a strong impact, but in the end I would say 99% of that, it's just a lottery if you become like the next Annie Warhol or so, right? And therefore I would say, I don't know, because it's in a way it's not very like regular economic sphere. uh, I don't know which kind of uh, like skills, financial skills, you need within this top 10 positions. And I think it's not worth to think about it, because it's not very likely that you end up there.
It's very interesting to have it pointed out that it's very similar, and the top 5 people get all kind of get most of the money, or there's a few big players in this area. Yeah, but I was also thinking about this comparison between art market and the nonprofit. I was thinking from a perspective of curator or like art managers, people who don't necessarily sell art, they own art, but work with budgets in these two areas. So someone who's a sales manager in a commercial gallery will have budgets that are very different from the non-profit charity that's manages a small amount. But
Yeah,
does this make a difference in what literacy skills you should have?
I would say no, because in the end, it's about budgets, and if they are big or not, it's about learning to calculate like a realistic budget, and also within in the spheres where there is much more money. I would say they also need to do their budgeting in a proper way, and in the end, they need to like they want to have returns. So it's so in so far, yes, it's different because the return within the nonprofit, there is basically no return,
Yeah.
right? It's not like this kind of focusing on returns. That's, I would say, that's the main difference between the art market that's focused on
Like
returns.
profit.
Profit, yeah. It's, yeah, take the words. That's the non-profit. There is no return, or at least no financial return. There are returns, and the returns are reputation, having social impact within certain communities or even in a broader public, making a difference for many people. For example, if we next year we will have a sex work exhibition, it's curated mainly by a team of sex workers, and they will tell their great history of sex work in Berlin as also cultural history. And I would say for them and their communities, it makes a really big difference that this history now is honored within a museum, right? As a very heavily marginalized history. So, and that's the return you get as a curator within this nonprofit area, that you can make some differences or help to make differences for people's lives. But financially, you are not allowed, which I also find a bit problematic. But you are not allowed to make profits. And within the art market, I would say in the other way around, it's all about, or it's so much about profit. It also has certain really difficult sides, right?
Yeah, but for I think for a lot of people, the social impact is extremely important in the arts, and with that comes a large sense of responsibility and ethics, which then
Yes.
makes finances a lot more
Yeah.
complicated because there is a lot of money in the arts, as I guess in any industry that isn't clean. It comes from weapon dealing or supporting war crimes, and I wanted to ask, what's your position on this from a financial point of view? Because I think it's tricky.
Yeah, it's tricky, but I also would say it's a bit kind of naive. That's a bit too much to say, but the money you get from like governmental institutions, it's the taxes are also basically not, they are not returns of super ethical businesses, right? So in a way, you are part of this world which is like it is, and even you only get, or you work only with nonprofit organizations, or like with um, fundings of the state. um, where does the money come from in the end? It's not ecological farming. Most of the taxes do not come from ecological or green farming. It comes from the chemical industry, it comes from the automobile industry, it comes from all these industries which are really, or even the banking industry, uh, which are really kind of
I
problematic,
think
right?
that's really interesting to hear. I think that's an interesting take that Yeah, is often omitted also, like we said, in art schools, because that seems the more, I guess, ethical option. But there's no ethical option. I guess they all kind of, the baseline is they all the same.
I would say it's a difference if you closely work, for example, for or with the Deutsche Bank, like which is the biggest bank in Germany, and it's in many ways it's problematic, right? And to deal with them like directly as part of their funding, it's a difference as to get like a funding from a program of the Senate of Berlin, right? But thinking a bit more deeper in that sphere, in the end, I think there is no clean money.
Now we talked about the professional side of kind of work, being a freelancer and working in the arts for the art market and for nonprofit institutions. But talking about financial literacy, it doesn't only help in the professional life, but I imagine it's also extremely helpful in dealing with personal finances. And having
Yeah,
these skills can translate better into money management in professional life as well. So when budgeting for institutions and exhibitions, what's your opinion? Kind of, do these skills translate between professional and personal life? Is this interconnected?
yeah, definitely. I think it's not only skills; it's also a mental, like a mental setting. It definitely, I would say, it definitely is connected with each other. That if you are able to manage your own finances, it's much likely that you are able to manage budgets because you do have like this kind of familiarity with planning, calculating, also estimating costs. Budgeting is always about the future, for sure. So you always have to estimate. You also have to deal with insecurity or uncertainty. You never know. Next year, where are the transportation rates next year to bring an artwork from UK to Germany or the other way around, right? So there's always a big part of calculating under the conditions of uncertainty. You don't know. And I would say that's one of the very basic mindsets within like dealing with finances, because you always have to deal with future. And we don't know the future, and therefore we don't like it. And because we don't know it, it feels like risk, and people don't like risk. Human beings don't like risks, for sure, because risks, we don't like that. We don't like if we don't know what's going on and what will happen. But dealing with finances, it's the very, very basic mindsets is to be able to deal with, yeah, not knowing what will happen, right? And to deal with it in a with like in a rational or yeah, in a rational way. That's for me one of the very, very basic skills, dealing with your personal finances, but also dealing with the finances of an organization, or entrepreneurship is the same thing. Like it's always dealing with this, oh, we don't know, and how we can set up something which could survive. Like you have to also think within scenarios: the best case, mid case, worst case. And I always would say really deal, like really focus the worst case to understand what could happen. It also can help to reduce fear, because if you know the worst case, and you know, even the worst case I will survive, it really puts a lot of like relaxation within your mental, or in your mental system. That's a bit more philosophical, but like I would say it comes down to this kind of
It's definitely
things.
great to hear having different scenarios in mind, because I feel like a lot of people can be very goal oriented and strive towards something, and then if there is something that doesn't go according to the plan, they're very much taken off track and kind of lose
Mm,
lose the all the planning that they've done is kind of has no use now, and people panic, make decisions that are
yeah,
hashed,
yeah,
and
panic.
then kind of have to suffer the consequences.
There is a lot of research on the connections between stress and also this specific chemical, cortisone. I don't know the English word.
Cortisol. Yeah, same. Yeah.
Cortisol. Cortisol, it's like the stress essence. So there is a lot of research on the connection between stress and cortisol level and the decisions you take. The higher the stress you have, the worse or it's much more likely that you will take bad financial decisions. And the bad financial decisions you took within the stress level will provoke more stress and provoke more bad decisions. And that's something which is really one of my core work, to really reduce the stress within this whole area. Therefore, people who are rich become richer because they are much more relaxed. So they are able to take good or rational financial decisions. They can deal much better with risks and with like this uncertainty because the stress level is lower. And so it's much more likely that they take good decisions which will make them even richer so they can take even better. That's like this really bad circle of poverty also.
Probably one reason why the rich are more relaxed, less stress about making risks or taking risks or making financial decisions is because they have something to fall off to. They have the safety net. But these also, speaking of these mindsets and stress levels, it's not only mindset, but I guess there must be some habits and very kind of practical things you can do maybe on a daily basis that can produce and help you become more in this mindset or become more relaxed about the finances.
I was really thinking a lot about these questions because I'm not sure if there is really like if there are some habits working for everyone. I think it's highly very individual. What I think is the habit, one of the basic habit, face the situation, really face the reality, your financial reality, because I know that very often people do not even know how much money they have on their account. And I think one of the, like we call it Kassensturz in Germany, the cash
Mm.
check, to write down your financial situation, like that you really know it. Because one of the things which I would say cause stress is that you don't know. To face the real situation, because that's the base. Then you can like operate on. That would say I would say that's a habit or like a practice which really is helpful for everyone. And then people are so different. Some people they really control every week, some control like every month, some say, I do have like a idea what's going on. I think it's very, very individual, and I wouldn't say everyone has to do it in a certain way. But to somehow deal with that, like find like a way you feel good with to deal with your finances, and that could be very
Mm.
different. And what I also want to really include, and that's also the question what people do get from the chorus. I want to minimize the distance to all these questions and to take out a bit of this fear or this it's something dirty, and to make you a bit familiar, and and also to introduce that it really can be fun. It's also interesting to deal with that. And it's a very, very good feeling to know, oh, I can navigate this financial car myself. So, and that's something I really want to. It will not happen that you will know everything after 4 hours or 6 hours course, right? But to really know, oh, I can learn that. It's not so complicated, and somehow it feels really good because it's like empowerment.
Yeah, I think it's a great advice to face your fears and know what your finances are. It's pretty simple, and everyone needs to figure it out on their own, partially. But I'm sure as a freelancer, this will give you a bit of a peace of mind. You know, as a freelancer, you might look at your bank balance, and living in the gig economy, you might not know when the next gig is coming. So having this peace of mind and looking into the future and thinking, you know, how much money do I need to survive half a year? Is what I have enough?
Yeah, and that was, I also would recommend you. You also asked about financial
Yeah.
resilience, and I would say the first step you should go is that you do have the money for half a year to survive, because that will really reduce stress, and so it will enable that you can deal much better with decisions you have to make, and also you also have the base to make plans, because if you are really totally under pressure financially, it's so difficult to plan, or impossible basically. And so, like, the first step should be try to get the money you need for half a year. That's like I would say, one of the most important factors of financial resilience as an entrepreneur. Even better, 1 year. And then you can think about, like, long-term investments. I will also give a check. I do have, like, a very small checklist to support people to do this first cash, like, to this first facing the situation. It includes the situation now, the present, but it also includes your plans and your ideas for the future, and so that you have, like, a path where you can do the planning, your personal planning.
Yeah, kind of speaking of planning for the future, I think freelancers often don't think about retirement, or don't think very long term, like you said, because half a year, that might seem overwhelming itself. These are the first steps to take care of the financial well-being long term. Is there anything that it might be very practical? Should people who are freelancers, who maybe are starting out as freelancers or are thinking of going from employment to freelance, should they start looking into retirement schemes? Should they put money aside in their own bank account?
They should, like, the first thing is, like, to make sure that you do have, like, the cash to survive half a year or a year. That's the first, and then you can think about long-term investments. And that's very it's also, this planning is not very complicated. It's basically, how long would you like to live? 80, 85, 90, whatever, right? How long do you think you should work, like, or earn money? I would say I would try to work forever, because I like working, and otherwise it's very boring. But how long I want, or when do I want to stop to be forced to earn money? And then you just can count. It's very, very easy. I will show that. It's really easy to make, like, a very basic planning, how to secure your retirement. And then you can decide, oh, that's maybe in the moment too difficult, but I do have it in mind that in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 5 years I will start that. And then there are some skills, and I also will teach this, how to invest. There are very, very few rules how to do it in a rational or in a proper way, which is, like, makes sense.
So that's all part of the today workshop. Yeah, yeah. That's what people can expect at Node.
They will have, like, this kind of first overview, what's the present situation financially, and they will also have, like, basic ideas of a planning, and they will know how they would invest if they can invest.
These are definitely some fantastic skills which the workshop participants will be able to learn. And thinking about long-term planning and financial literacy, I wanted to share something I read recently. It was an article investigating the financial literacy gender gap, which concluded that women's financial literacy skills are less developed, and often that is because of a lack of confidence in this area. So, is this still a man's world? Did you kind of come across this?
Yes, yes, many times for sure. I'm always, like, like meetings with so-called experts, right? Investment experts. Very often, I'm the only
Mm.
woman. Very, very often. And for me, it's part of the fun I really have with this job, because I do have like this doctorate, so people are a bit kind of impressed, and I really like to play this game with these guys to tell them, come on, don't tell me stories. Let's talk about the real things, right? My personal confidence in in the financial world or in the financial business is very much based on my knowledge, because I know a lot of things. And so I can be confident because I do have this knowledge. Therefore, we need kind of knowledge, because it helps to create confidence. And in my personal experience, I wouldn't agree with this study you mentioned. In my personal, I do work with women as well as with men clients. And in my personal experience, it's much more like that. Women very often underestimate their skills and their knowledge, whereas men tend to overestimate their knowledge and their skills. I think that's, for me at least, the basic finding in my personal research, in my experience.
I've come across job listings that had this small kind of disclaimer at the end of it saying that very often women feel like if they don't tick all the boxes on the job listing, if they don't have all the requirements, then they don't apply, and men do. So please do apply if and you feel like it would be a good fit.
There are also another studies working on online portfolios, where people do manage their own stock markets or stocks, and the findings in in this studies was more that in the end, the results of portfolios managed by women were much better than the ones of men, because men tend to trade much more, to take much more risks, basically to do a lot of stupid things, which doesn't, yeah, which in the end will really minimize their results, because they think they are so great that they know which stocks will come up in the next days. And women do think, oh, I don't know, maybe I will do a bit more like a passive way to invest, like just let it go and do not trade so much. That's a very, very common finding if you compare like the investment styles of male persons and female persons.
You mentioned you're the only woman in the room often, and I see how that's exciting for you, for someone who has the knowledge and experience and authority. But I think it can definitely be intimidating for people who are only starting out. What um,
Yeah.
what I do often when I want to learn about something new is go to YouTube and just learn the basics from there. And oftentimes it's primarily men discussing these topics, especially financial topics, and they're the loud voices in the space.
Yeah, but there are also more and more women, there is, like, at least in Germany, there is a huge community of online bloggers and video bloggers, supporting people to learn how to invest. And I think, yeah, the majority, even today, are male persons, but there are more and more women coming into this field. The last question, I also would say it's very difficult for me to recommend resources, because, and it's really difficult because would recommend one book. It's in German. It's really great. It's one I've from in my personal experience, in my personal view, it's the best book in the market today. But it's only in German, so it doesn't make sense to recommend it. Um, I would I also do, what I also can offer is, and it's very easy to translate it into English via DeepL or whatever. I do write for Get Abstract. Get Abstract is a company um, like selling abstracts for people who don't like to read the books themselves. regularly write about financial books. And so I really could recommend some of the books I reviewed, and I also could offer to give the abstract so people can deal with that. And there are some books which are really great.
We'll add a link to the description of this podcast so you can check the abstracts that Birgit wrote. Thank you very much. I think these are, we've gotten so much incredible knowledge and advice from you, and then some tools that will be definitely helpful to people who are listening to this podcast. It's really a pleasure talking to you today.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Curating Tools. My guest today was Birgit Bosold, um, lecturer, independent financial coach, and consultant who leads the Managing Your Finances as an Arts and Culture Freelancer workshop for Notes Center for Curatorial Studies. If you'd like to shape upcoming episodes and gain access to more members only content, try our membership, which starts at only €295 per month. Get a free trial via the link in the description. Check it out, and thanks for listening.